Hello friends, nice to see you again, or if you're new here, welcome to Everything Elle, where I talk about mainly books, but sometimes other stuff too. Today we are going to discuss some of my favorite books from 2020, and I will admit I feel like I was a bit more nitpicky with the books that I was reading. It was very hard for me to dish out 5 stars, or at least in comparison to previous years, I feel like I was a lot stricter with my 5 stars. However, 2020 was filled with some pretty great reads, and I'm excited to talk about them with you. All of these books that I am about to mention, I did give a 5 stars, but they are in no particular order other than the last one. The last one is my absolute favorite of 2020. To start off, I'm going to mention 1,000 Pieces of You by Claudia Gray. It is the first book in the Firebird series, and I have talked about this book quite a few times in previous videos, so because of that, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of details as to what this book is about. Basically, it is a sci-fi that deals with alternate realities as well as like a murder, and it also has a sappy romance that I completely ate up. The second book I gave 5 stars in 2020, and I really enjoyed, even though the sequel kind of disappointed me. And that was Spin the Dawn by Elizabeth Lim. This was the first book in the Blood of the Stars series. This was just such a beautifully written book, and the bit of angst with the romance just truly gripped me. Spin the Dawn is a Project Runway meets Mulan YA fantasy where a young girl poses as a boy in order to compete for the role of Imperial Tailor. Maya has always dreamed of becoming the greatest tailor in the land, but is held back by the fact that she's a girl. Despite that, however, she risks it all to pose as a boy and enter into this competition. And of course, it is not easy. She has obstacles, and of course she needs to keep her true identity a secret, which, as we all know, never turns out the best. Overall, this book was just very unique. I loved the plot and the characters, and like I said, that romance in there, like, would it be considered forbidden love, kind of, technically? Enemies to lovers, maybe? It was just great, and I gave it a 5 stars. The sequel, however, left me kind of disappointed. I didn't love the sequel, but that's beside the point. That's not what this video is about. The next book/books series that I really enjoyed in 2020 and gave 4 and 5 stars to were the books in the Shadow Game series by Amanda Foody, and this kicked off my 2020 year. I read Ace of Shades and King of Fools back to back in January of 2020, and I absolutely fell in love. I have not read Queen of Volts yet. I know, I'm a disappointment. I need to get to it, but they are just so atmospheric books, and the characters and all of the characters in this series, just, I love them. But it is such a good fantasy series, and I truly feel like it's not talked about enough on BookTube, which I don't understand why. Like I said, I really could not shut up about this series at the beginning of the year. It is a magical mafia Vegas type feel. This series is just everything to me. It is so good. Your emotions run high. There's mystery. The magic is interesting, or the transaction of magic is interesting. I don't know. I just feel like this series has it all, and it needs to be talked about more, is all I'm gonna say. Next, which is kind of a shock for me, I was not expecting this, but I really enjoyed the Radium Girls by Kate Moore, and this is the only nonfiction that I have read and really enjoyed. It was so intense, and it was so angering. We didn't always know the horrifying side effects of radium, and sadly lots of women died before regulations surrounding it changed, and that's kind of what this book is about. We follow kind of the history of the women who worked with radium and how it started off being this fantastic, kind of magical, well aspired to job, and it slowly turned into basically a death sentence for many of the women who worked with radium, and how much they had to struggle to get compensation and just recognition that yes, we screwed up. We're killing you. Getting that admission from corporations, it's so crazy to think about. And I really recommend this book. It's very hard hitting. It's very intense. I feel like it doesn't read like a stereotypical nonfiction or what a person would think a nonfiction would read like. I don't know. I feel like nonfiction to me is just boring. You're just getting fed pieces of information. But this just, I don't know if it was because I felt for these women so hard, but it was an experience. It really was, this book. Before I mention my top favorite book of 2020, I did want to do a few honorable mentions that I also really enjoyed, but I didn't give 5 stars for one reason or another. It just fell a bit short from my 5-star mark. And the first one I want to mention is Where Dreams Descend by Janella Angelis. This is the first book in the Kingdom of Cards series. Another highly underrated book on BookTube. I have not heard very many people talking about this book, and I don't understand why. It definitely gives me kind of Ace of Shades vibe, but differently. This is more of like performing magicians, but it just, I don't know, it gave me the same mystery, atmospheric vibes. Very atmospheric book. I also really enjoyed all the mystery surrounding the disappearance of the magicians, both present and past. It kept me hooked the entire way through. I could see potentially why people wouldn't enjoy this book. There was a lot of mystery. There was a lot of very vague clues and hints given to us, which normally that would be very frustrating and irritating to me, but I think it just worked very well in this book. It kept me enticed, and the characters just really worked. There is one particular character who is definitely just, he is a question mark entirely, but I like that. The characters just all really worked very well with me. Regardless, this is a fantastic book. I am so excited to see what else the series brings. I mean, we were left on a huge cliffhanger at the end of book 1, so I'm excited for what's to come. The next honorable mention is 3 Dark Crowns by Kendare Blake, and this is book 1 in the Dark Crowns series. I loved the settings, the distinct settings, and the distinct personalities of the 3 queens. I don't usually like books where it's like we're all fighting to the death where one person is victorious. I usually don't like that. We spent so much time with each of these individual queens and their situations. I just wanted them to find a way out of this, but there was so much more involved. It was not black and white. There's so much going on. The cliffhanger at the end is like, what? Oh, my mouth dropped at the end. I was like, what is going on? I mean, this whole thing was just a roller coaster. And my last honorable mention is The Gilded Wolves by Roshani Chokshi. It is the first book in the Gilded Wolves series, and this one takes the cake of honorable mentions. This one gave me a lot more Da Vinci Code vibes, and I love that. There was just so much more history, so much more, not just we're gonna blow this up and we're gonna try and get in here. Like, there was just so much more backstory, so much more just history with this, and you're just sucked into the book right away. Another one where the cliffhanger just left me with my jaw on the floor. The only reason why it wasn't a complete 5 stars, because I don't exactly know how foraging works. There was a few instances where we kind of just had this foraged device thing, and it just kind of came up at the exact moment that it was needed. So I didn't quite grasp how foraging worked. But nonetheless, this was a fantastic book. I have not read The Silvered Serpents, which is killing me. I need to get my hands on it. It's not available through my library, sadly. All of these honorable mentions I gave 4 stars. They are still so great. It's just, like I said, I started getting a bit more nitpicky with my 5 stars, but they are all fantastic and I highly recommend it. And now for my favorite book of 2020. If you've been watching my videos, I've mentioned this book quite a few times. I've called it my favorite book of 2020. I'm just gonna give you a second and just comment down below, what do you think my favorite book of 2020 was? If you didn't know, it's okay, I forgive you. My favorite book of 2020 was You Deserve Each Other by Sarah Hogle, and this one was just everything to me. I read it as an audiobook and the narrator just did such an amazing job at really bringing Naomi to life for me. It was like I was listening to Naomi talk my ear off on the phone. It was great. I loved the narrator. The book itself was so witty and funny, but at the same time, it just gave you these bits of like, here's reality. It was just so good. It was emotional when it needed to be. It was romantic when it needed to be. There were many times where my eyes were tearing up. Like, it just truly is such a great book with so many little details in there that complete it for me. A little, synopsis, even though I've mentioned it a few times, but Naomi and Nicholas are engaged and set to be married very soon. However, as this date approaches, Naomi starts to realize that she may have fallen out of love with Nicholas. The love isn't there anymore. And it's not just like something happened with Naomi and Nicholas. It was just a lot of outside factors that really pushed them apart, or at least Naomi thinks so. However, she's afraid to call off the wedding because she doesn't want to have to foot the bill. She's afraid that Nicholas or his very over-controlling mother would try and put the blame on Naomi and make her pay for the wedding, everything that's been booked so far. So she embarks on a petty war with Nicholas in trying to get him to call it off first, and it is just a joy. It really is a joy, even though there are, some emotional moments. There's just so much goodness in this book, and it really is a journey, and I highly recommend. If you take nothing else from this video, definitely check out You Deserve Each Other by Sarah Hogle. It is an adult romance. So those were my favorites of 2020. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Please give it a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it. My name is Elle. Let's hope 2021 brings more favorites, and I'll see you in next time's video.